in order to create that trust, you have got to be honest enough to know that you're not the right person for everybody. But those people that you do connect with, when you find that connection, that is when you can start to go through that process. You can face the emotions that they're feeling, understand what makes them tick. And that's that feel it area of understand how they're feeling. You start to ask the right questions. And more importantly, you have the ability to answer the questions that they are asking you.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a maybe feel-good one. Our guest is an Australian emotional intelligence expert, speaker, and author of The Emotional Intelligence Advantage, Mastering Change and Difficult Conversations. Amy Jacobson, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael.
It's great to have you, and emotional intelligence, such an important piece that I think often people maybe have heard about, know a little bit about, but it's happening all the time and so valuable. So I'd love to jump into this with you, and maybe we'll start with, tell us a little bit about you, how you ended up doing what you're doing today.
Yeah, sure. So my background was actually in the corporate world. So I was in insurance for a very long time and just climbed that corporate ladder, but always had this fascination with mind. Originally wanted to be in criminology and forensics because I always was kind of fascinated on how some people's minds could be so messed up to do such horrific things. Realized quickly that I couldn't switch off from that, and that wasn't going to be the best field of work for me to go into. So yeah, into insurance world, and I think that that's quite a niche world where, especially in life insurance, where you learn a lot about what makes people tick and how people react in certain circumstances. That love of the mind continued through that area, and I started doing a lot of work around the emotional intelligence within that industry, and really being able to help out the organizations that I worked in to understand what creates and what builds a high-performing leader, what helps to actually grow an organization to be successful, and what makes you different from your competitors. So the more that I dived into that area, the more research that I did, the more study that I did, it became very obvious that we focus so heavily in our workplaces around our offering, our services, our product, but our competitors can copy that so easily. And what it really comes down to is getting your people working at their highest capability. And that capability comes with a balance between IQ and EQ. And as we know, IQ is pretty well covered in workplaces, and especially when people are entering in. The EQ is an area that is growing, and it's great to see it growing. But this has become my passion to build that focus on the EQ side and get the balance right in workplaces.
Very cool. So for our listener, tell us a little bit, like, how would you explain what emotional intelligence means for small business owners?
Sure. It's the answer to emotional intelligence is quite long-winded at times and makes it a little bit grey or complex to understand. So my easiest way to talk about emotional intelligence is to actually compare it to IQ. And what would I say is emotional intelligence is not what you know or what you can do. It's the how and why you do it. So what you know and what you can do falls into your IQ. That is your skills, your ability, your knowledge, your education, your experience that's coming into it. But the how and why you do it. So how you actually apply those skills, how you apply that IQ, how you interact with the people around you, how you communicate, and the why that's driving you, that purpose, that need, that thing that gets you out of bed every morning, and those emotions that are attached to it. That is your EQ. So you can see how the two of them go hand in hand. And this emotional intelligence side is understanding about, how the people around you feel, when you're interacting or communicating with them or you're around them. It is to do with those ways that you interact. It's the face of your business. It's managing your emotions. It is all about that how and why.
Okay, very cool. That makes sense. And so maybe let's take it into our business scenario where our listener lives and breathes. Is they've got a small, medium-sized bookkeeping firm that they perhaps work in or run, and they work with lots of different business owners. Where are they going to bang up against emotional intelligence in their world?
So what we tend to find, especially in professions such as bookkeepers, naturally the type of people that are drawn to those roles are very good at numbers. They're very good at analytics, at running reports about detailed data. And that's using a very different side of your mind than the emotional intelligence side. So the biggest challenges that bookkeepers are going to hit up against is having the ability to have the strengths in bookkeeping and having that attention to detail, but also being able to translate that over and work it together with your emotional intelligence, because especially when you're working with people who are small to medium businesses that you're running, their businesses are their baby. The emotional attachment is so huge. So to hand off even their books to somebody else, it's a trust thing. It's are you going to care about my baby as much as I do? Are you going to talk me through the details? Are you going to make sure that I'm doing all the right things and that I'm maximizing what I can do? So what bookkeepers are going to find is when their customers are coming to them, while they want them to be an expert in bookkeeping, they also want an emotional connection. They want to know that their bookkeeper cares. They want to know that their bookkeeper is understanding the real purpose of their business and what they do and how they do it and what is important to them. And I think that's the biggest challenge that we've got as bookkeepers, is remembering to play to your strengths, but also finding that happy balance and building those skills that maybe don't come as naturally to you as those analytical skills. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges, I would say. And that other one is just riding that roller coaster, whether the bookkeepers whether we're referring to their clients' businesses or even referring to their own. Every small business owner constantly goes through a roller coaster, where we think we've got everything absolutely nailed and everything's fantastic. And then all of a sudden we wake up the next morning and we're a little bit worried about where our next client will come from, or, what's going to happen to the invoices that haven't been paid yet. So it's really having the ability to also reflect internally and face the emotions that come with being a small business owner, and understanding how to face those emotions and process them as well.
We'll get back to the interview right after this word from our sponsor. Bookkeepers are often the unsung heroes of the business world. You're the ones keeping the engine running, but you don't always get the recognition you deserve. I know how vital you are to business success, and the team at Bill knows it too. That's why they're hosting Bookkeeper Appreciation Week from March 30th to April 3rd, dedicated to recognizing the real work you do and giving you the tools you can actually use to free up time for more strategic work. So mark your calendars for March 30th and get ready for 5 days of practical resources delivered straight to your inbox, plus live CPE-eligible webinars. You'll discover what bookkeepers are navigating right now, advisory work, pricing, and AI, along with proven strategies they're already using. Trust me, You're going to want to check this out. Register now at bill.com/successful bookkeeper. Thank you for hearing from our sponsor. Now let's get back to the interview. Yeah, it's very interesting, and we are emotional creatures, and we bring all of that through our life growing up. We have these different emotional ways of being, and then, like you say, the strength and the focus and where we put all the attention. Sometimes the emotions don't get paid much attention to, and then you layer in this fact that you're working with people who have a whole different connection to their own emotional intelligence. It must be one of those things where there's a lot of opportunity to improve things. When you're working with people and seeing, what do you see start to happen when people pay more attention to this work?
The main thing I see is trust. Trust builds. So we know with human beings, through all of the research that we've done, is that you will have a far greater level of trust when you create a relationship with somebody. So it's very hard for the human mind to be able to trust somebody that they don't know, or that has no vulnerability, or hasn't opened up to them, or doesn't connect and become relatable. So when you're handing over your books to a bookkeeper, you want to know that you're actually creating that trust. And when I work with bookkeepers and we start to balance that out to get them thinking about, even though what they do day to day and what they can do with their eyes closed is very much an unknown and sometimes quite a fear for other business owners. And to have the ability to park the bookkeeping to the side for a moment and create a relationship with your client will naturally start to build that trust, to be able to show that you understand their business, that you care about their business, that you understand their fears, and that you can reassure them along the way. That is going to make the world of difference between that relationship. And it also is what differentiates between those bookkeepers that are transactional compared to a really great bookkeeper that stays with an organization or stays with a small business or stays with a client for a long time, because those levels of trust and understanding are built.
It's great. It's super valuable and a little elusive, I'm sure, for our listener. You talk about in your book a step process to improving this and growing your own emotional intelligence. Maybe let's focus there, because, having people trust you sooner and more deeply, I mean, that's great for business. And if our listener can accomplish that, then we're on the right tracks. But how do we do that?
Yeah. So when we start to look at trust, there's a few different elements that we're looking at. And this is where your fundamental part of emotional intelligence starts to kick in. So to create trust, you've got to tap into your emotional brain. The area of emotional intelligence, well, not so much the area, but the process that I would go through with emotional intelligence is those five key steps. And those 5 key steps are own it, face it, feel it, ask it, and drive it. And what we tend to see is every single person goes through this process, not just once a day, but continuously through the day, and especially as we're interacting with other human beings. And the trust that we're looking to create is understanding where in that process the other person is and being able to meet them there and help them to get to the next stage. So when we look at these 5 different stages, we always start with this own it step. And this own it step is in our own head. This is about us owning the reality of the situation. It's about owning what makes us tick. It's about being self-aware of the person that's coming to you. So this is that real opportunity for each person, whether it's the client or whether it's the bookkeeper, to be able to create some form of relatability, connection, or something that aligns the two of them. It's about owning the fact that some clients are not going to be for you, and that is okay. I had a conversation with a client today who came to me for some emotional intelligence work, and just based on the information that they gave me up front before we even spoke about, the potential of a session, it was speaking about the people that they have in their team straight away told me that I wasn't the right person to be able to deliver that training to them. And there's plenty of amazing people out there that can do that. And I think this is the same with your bookkeeping, is that in order to create that trust, you have got to be honest enough to know that you're not the right person for everybody. But those people that you do connect with, when you find that connection, that is when you can start to go through that process. You can face the emotions that they're feeling, understand what makes them tick. And that's that feel it area of understand how they're feeling. You start to ask the right questions. And more importantly, you have the ability to answer the questions that they are asking you. And then that last step around drive it is really bringing to life what they're looking to get out of their bookkeeper.
Fantastic. So when people start to apply this, I'd love to hear some stories about the transformation that can occur when people start to go through this process of improving and growing their own emotional intelligence.
Yeah. So when we start to see people really tapping into this, the first thing we see is people starting to understand themselves better and taking ownership of who they are. So it's being able to look and know that in every situation we play a role, and it's natural for our mind to look elsewhere, for it to either to point the finger or to place the blame, because our mind is actually wired since the day we're born to want to be right. You know, we've been rewarded throughout our whole lives to be right, whether it's through schools and getting the right answer, getting the right grades, and all the way through into adulthood and that real need to be right. So when it comes to a working situation, it feels like being wrong for us is a failure. So you want to look for that right side. So to speak about one of my clients who was really challenged in the bookkeeping space, really challenged by the fact that they weren't able to hold on to a lot of their clients that they were having. A lot of clients that would come for a short period of time and move on. And when I spoke to them, there was a lot of detail around. They could tell me for every single client what was wrong with the client, why they weren't right, why they didn't work out. But what was lacking was the ability to be able to look internally and understand what role did I play in each one of those situations. So sitting down to really look at it and getting them to own the fact that they were lacking in that emotional intelligence side. They were a fantastic bookkeeper, but their communication skills were shocking. When they were going back to their clients, they were speaking very much in bookkeeping terms. The clients couldn't understand them, which meant that looking at these clients, they were unsure whether everything was being covered. Some of these clients found it hard to sleep at night knowing, are my books okay? Am I going to get audited? Is everything being done right? So what was lacking was that actual relationship. And it wasn't until we started to dive into this to really own for them, okay, what role are you playing in each one of these situations and how can you be better at it? That's when we dug into the actual emotions that this person was feeling. And it wasn't so much the inability to be able to actually connect with people. It was purely just that they were so tunnel focused on bookkeeping. And for them, it was just going in and doing the best bookkeeping they could possibly do. And they felt like that would speak for itself. But once they started to understand that that comfort area didn't extend into having a one-on-one conversation with somebody, getting to know somebody, getting to know what their interests are, just being able to break the ice and speak in a language that worked for their client rather than a language that worked for them. So we had to face these emotions that were really holding them back and look at, okay, yes, your client is not always going to be perfect, but you cannot control your client. You can't change them. They are who they are. The only thing you do have control over is how you're contributing to the system, to the situation. And once we got through that, own it and face it, and they could look internally for them and work on themselves, then we could get them out of their own head and get them to start understanding how their clients are feeling when they're coming to them. So looking at those feelings of those clients that are coming in with this fear that is driving a lot of it, or this overwhelm where they're coming in and, their books are a mess and they're a bit embarrassed about them because they haven't been well maintained for a couple of years, or they're nervous about the fact that, they're taking a risk in their business. Can I afford to do this? Am I ready to outsource yet? Am I ready to outsource my books? Getting them to understand how their clients were feeling when they come to them, and then helping them to actually pose the right questions and answer the questions that these clients needed to hear was the most important thing. And they were things like just asking them about, what are you looking for in a bookkeeper? What is it that you need from me each month? Because for each client, it was different. Some people wanted a full detailed report on exactly what's gone through, where they're at, how it's looking, where other people, that was quite overwhelming. All they wanted from their bookkeeper each month was to say, everything's under control, all of your invoices are up to date, all of your receipts, your books look great, here's your end result that you're looking at. But getting those bookkeepers to understand that having one process for every client is not emotionally intelligent. It's not about us. It's about what your client needs from you. And to be a great bookkeeper, to be a great business owner, you've got to adapt. You've got to look at the client in front of you and say, what does this person need from me? And how do they need to hear it from me? So once we started to do that and get them asking those questions, creating those conversations, but also knowing how to answer the question that didn't make the client feel stupid, feel like they were uneducated, and helped them to understand it and to build that trust, then that's how their relationship started to grow. And that's when they become a part of the small business or the organization rather than an external outsource. They become part of it.
It's powerful stuff. And I would imagine there's a connection. We've talked a lot about clients. Let's talk a little bit about those that have staff, how they connect and deal with staff. And it would be interesting to know of the bookkeeper who was losing clients. I mean, maybe she didn't have any staff, or if she did, what that would look like. Is there differences? Should people be thinking about that, and how should they be thinking about it?
Yeah, so internally, is that what you mean? Internally
Yes.
with stuff? Yeah. So leadership is a completely different skill set. And I think when we're looking at small to medium businesses, one of the biggest challenges that we see is that when people start up a small business, we all start small, right? A small business, and even grow to that medium size. We start up that business because usually we're really passionate in the service or the offering that we're actually doing. So you've got people starting up bookkeeping businesses because they're great bookkeepers and they love bookkeeping. But at some point in time, as your business grows and you get more people recruited and growing into your business, you realize that you can't just be a bookkeeper, you must be a leader as well. And as I said, leadership is a completely different skill set. And one of the biggest mistakes we make is that people become leaders and don't get any training in that space at all. They just feel like, okay, leadership's something anyone can do. You just kind of got to wing it and go through and make sure that you're actually connecting with these people. But leadership in itself is a skill. And we've got to take the time to be able to understand what leadership is, and that becoming a leader with no training whatsoever would be similar to bringing on a bookkeeper with no training whatsoever and expecting them to be a brilliant bookkeeper. You've got to start to understand that at a leadership point of view, you are dealing with people, and with people comes emotions. And it's now falling in your hands to not just make sure that the bookkeeping is done right, but that these people are motivated, that these people are doing okay, that these people are psychologically safe, that these people have got career aspirations and goals. And every single person you bring into your organization is going to look slightly different, because a successful organization isn't a clone of the same type of people. Like, you need some people that are really, big personalities that are going to innovate and drive and grow your business and connect and have that energy level. But you also need people that are a little bit more introverted, that just want to come in and do the same thing day in, day out and do it really well. And when you bring just simply these two people together, it tends to cause friction. And as a leader, you have got to build the skills to be able to help these people work together and know that it's not about everyone being exactly the same as you. It's about understanding the differences, how you can leverage it, and how you can work together to kind of bridge those gaps, rather than expecting everyone to be a version of you. So leadership is it's a challenge, but it's an exciting challenge, and I would encourage all business owners out there to understand that leadership is not for everyone. The same as bookkeeping is not for everyone. So don't be afraid if you are looking to grow your business and to create a team. Don't be afraid to get an experienced leader into your team. If you want to stay doing the bookwork, if you want to stay with the hands-on, that is completely okay. But don't try to do leadership as kind of a side job, because what you'll find is you'll end up with a lot of reactive leadership problems that are going to take up a lot of your time, because great leadership is actually something that we are proactive about, that we plan for, so those reactive moments become less and less.
Mm-hmm. And is there something that our listener could be working on, like daily habits or practices that you would recommend for them to work on their own emotional intelligence?
One of the simplest tips that I give people is when we talk about emotional intelligence, the first thing that I would always say is be aware of where your starting point is. And look, there are so many emotional intelligence tools out there that you can measure your emotional intelligence, and some of them are fantastic. But also don't get hooked up on the fact that a lot of those tools, you'll read the results and you'll think, wow, that is 100% me. Of course it's you. You answered the question. It went through a tree kind of diagram in the back, and of course it's telling you exactly who you are. But finding out who you are is not the most important part. It's then knowing, how do I increase those levels of emotional intelligence? So once you start to become aware of the emotionally intelligent areas that you are strong in, and those ones that maybe you aren't so strong, and there's a free tool on my website if people want to check it out as well. But knowing that, there is one simple question that you can ask yourself at the end of every day, and that is, how emotionally intelligent was I today? Simple as that. Like 2 minutes at the end of your day. When you ask yourself, how emotionally intelligent was I today? And just reflect on that day, and then ask yourself the question, what will I do tomorrow to be one step better than I was today? And I think it's that whole thing of not going for perfection, because I truly believe that there's no such thing as an emotionally intelligent person in this world. I really don't believe it. I teach this kind of stuff. I would never, ever call myself emotionally intelligent. Emotional intelligence is a skill, and it's a skill that all of us have the ability to build. Some of us, it comes a little bit more natural than others, but it is a buildable skill. And because it's a skill, in every situation, we have a choice to make. We can either respond in an emotionally intelligent way or not. And sometimes we get it right, and sometimes we get it really wrong. But the most emotionally intelligent people are the ones that recognize when they get it wrong, and they own it, and they apologize if an apology is needed, and they look for a way to improve so they don't do that again. And I think that just asking yourself that one question at the end of the day is going to help you to own your levels of emotional intelligence, how well you managed your emotions during the day, and be able to ask yourself the question of what could I do better tomorrow, and just slowly chip away at that area.
This is great. Now, you have a book, you've written a book about this. Maybe tell a little bit about the book and how that might help them as well start to take themselves towards mastery around knowing themselves and their emotional intelligence.
So my latest book out is The Emotional Intelligence Advantage. This one is very specific around mastering change and difficult conversations, which is two of the key areas as leaders we tend to avoid or don't do very well. So this one is a step up from my first book. My first book was very much the fundamental basics of emotional intelligence, where this one is really aimed at the leader level. So if you are a small to medium business owner, when I say leader, I don't mean by job title, I mean by skill set. So if you are somebody who is seen as a leader, whether it is by your clients, whether it is by your team, whether it is by your family, whether it is by your friends, whatever it is, this book helps you to be able to understand what happens to our mind when we go through change and how emotional intelligence is actually fundamental to our ability to accept change, to be able to understand that our mind is filled with neural pathways that are telling us and that are embedded with those habits that tell us exactly what to do when A happens. We do B, C, D. And when change occurs, it's like there's an alarm bell that goes off in our mind that says something is wrong. Something is wrong. Because the embedded neural pathway tells me when this happens, I do this and this. And now you're telling me that that's different. So the book really goes into the detail of understanding what happens in the mind when we are faced with change, how to bring the emotional intelligence, how to bring our emotional intelligence into play to be able to help our mind go through the transition into that new change and really buy into it. And as part of that, it's a natural part that we are going to be faced with difficult conversations, especially with the amount and the intensity and size of the change that we're faced with today.
Excellent. Sounds like a great book. Sounds like something our listeners should be reading. And you mentioned on your website that you had a free tool. So maybe let's talk a little bit about where people can get access to the book and maybe access to an audiobook. I said listening because I often listen to books for the most part. But let our listener know where they can learn more about you and where they can get access perhaps to some resources that you offer.
Sure. So my website is the best place to go, and that is amyjacobson.com.au. On my website, you'll find quite a bit of insights and free tools. So there is a lot of articles in there. There is a lot of other podcasts, media, and also a lot of hot topics that I've really drilled into to be able to help people to build in areas like that. The free tool is around measuring your emotional intelligence. So it's a very simple tool to actually get that fundamental starting point of where your emotional intelligence is at. So therefore you can start to work on developing it as well. You'll also find the links to both of my books in there as well. And you'll also find them on all book outlets. So whether it's online, bricks and mortar, in stores, so they're all through Canada and America as well. And there are audiobooks, there's downloadable books, there's ebooks, it comes in all different types. So website is the best place to start, but also too, and I truly do mean this, I love chatting. So if you ever have any questions, LinkedIn is a great place to find me. Reach out. I love to have a chat, and I'm more than happy to help you in any way that I can.
Beautiful. Well, Amy, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the show and sharing your expertise with us. And we really appreciate the time that you spent with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. It's been an absolute pleasure.
The pleasure is all ours. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.